Welcome to a deep dive into Formula One where we strip away the noise and look directly at the underlying forces shaping the sport. And right now, nothing is more transformative than Lewis Hamilton's stunning move to Ferrari, a story that at first seemed like a romantic headline, but has rapidly revealed itself as something much bigger, something seismic, something reshaping the very foundations of Maranello from the inside out. When the news first broke that Hamilton would join Ferrari, the reaction across the paddock, on social media, and in the press leaned heavily towards sarcasm, with memes about nostalgia, politics, and the dreamy vision of Lewis in red. Yet beneath the surface, insiders were already seeing this as a calculated masterstroke. Not just a champion switching teams, but a seven-time world champion carrying with him a blueprint for total revolution, one that would test every assumption Ferrari had lived by for over a decade. This was not simply a driver adapting to a new car. It was Hamilton dissecting Ferrari from day one, questioning everything from pedal positions to front-end geometry, refusing to slide neatly into an existing system, but instead prying it open and asking why it was built the way it was, why long-held philosophies had gone unchallenged, why evolution had trumped revolution for so long. What looked to outsiders like a star trying to fit in was in reality the very start of an audacious internal redesign, a restructuring both technical and cultural. The moment Hamilton stepped into the simulator, even before the SF25 touched trackside, he began delivering incredibly detailed technical reports that were not just about car balance or cornering, but about the very process of building, developing, and operating the car. He questioned ingrained traditions, suggested systemic changes, and began mapping weaknesses in the Ferrari framework. This wasn't Hamilton slotting into Ferrari's mold. It was Hamilton reshaping Ferrari around himself with surgical precision. Outsiders dismissed his initial struggles on track as difficulty adapting. But inside the garage, it was crystal clear that Hamilton wasn't struggling. He was pushing a machine that hadn't been designed for him, wrestling with a philosophy that catered to Charles Leclerc's style. A style rooted in high rotation, sharper geometry, and a looser rear that suited his instinctual aggression. Hamilton, on the other hand, thrives on absolute precision under pressure, late braking, trail braking with total trust in the front end, and a predictable rear platform, and Ferrari's SF25 simply wasn't built for that nuance. Every time Hamilton tried to stabilize the car with conventional setups, he hit a wall. Limited base configurations, design resistance, and internal hesitation to radically alter their DNA. The result was what many labeled as patchwork setups, messy improvisations that from the outside looked like chaos, but in truth were tactical experiments, forced adaptations to expose weaknesses in the car's philosophy. While Leclerc thrived within the known parameters, Hamilton was operating in real-time evolution, layering sim data with track feedback, mapping what the SF25 could become rather than accepting what it was. This divergence soon split Ferrari into two fundamentally different paths, one car optimized for Leclerc's rhythm and rotation, the other slowly but unmistakably being reprogrammed into Hamilton's language. The telemetry between the two became almost incomparable. What boosted confidence for one killed lap time for the other, a clear sign of philosophical clash. Yet Hamilton refused to compromise. Drawing on his Mercedes experience, he documented everything meticulously, not just car issues, but team structures, communication flows, and even race weekend execution. His debrief notes turned into blueprints, roadmaps of how Ferrari could reclaim championship-level efficiency. One of the earliest flashpoints came from something as seemingly minor as pedal position, which Hamilton insisted be fundamentally changed to align with his braking style. To outsiders, this seemed cosmetic, but to Hamilton, it was the foundation of trust, the first input that dictates how a car communicates at 300 kilometers per hour. This change sparked internal debates at Ferrari, clashing with Leclerc's baseline and causing complications in cockpit design and simulator calibration. Yet Hamilton held firm because he knew that if the pedals did not speak his language, the rest of the car never would. That small battle symbolized something greater. Hamilton wasn't demanding comfort. He was laying down the cracks of a new foundation, forcing Ferrari to reconsider its cockpit philosophy and ultimately its entire design approach. As the season unfolded, patterns emerged. Understeer became a recurring issue for Hamilton in mid-corner sequences, especially as tires degraded, forcing his side of the garage into aggressive front-loading and quick fixes that destabilized the rear, creating hypersensitive steering and killing corner confidence. Attempts at radical simulator solutions were sometimes blocked not just by technical limits, but by political ones, as Ferrari's hierarchy leaned on tradition and preferred cautious evolution. Yet Hamilton persisted, using messy race windows, fluctuating pace, and radio disputes as stress tests, deliberate pressure points designed to expose flaws in Ferrari's rigid system. His so-called struggles were not failures, but calculated experiments, stress testing assumptions one by one. The distinction is vital. While Leclerc's consistency kept Ferrari competitive within its established system, Hamilton's chaotic adaptation revealed that the philosophy itself was limited, built around one interpretation of performance, and in an ever-changing F1 landscape that rigidity was a recipe for stagnation. Slowly but surely, the engineers began to recognize this. Development paths began to split subtly. Hamilton's feedback carried more weight in meetings, and even in the tone of radio exchanges there was a shift toward urgency when dealing with his requests. Concrete results followed: improved tire wear, reduced rear instability, more consistent mid-corner performance. His car was no longer just a modified version of Ferrari's philosophy. It was being reprogrammed to speak his driving language. This evolution has now brought Ferrari to a pivotal crossroads. Do they remain with a philosophy that has brought them close but never quite enough? Or do they embrace the radical vision of a seven-time champion who refuses to be another chapter in their long history? That tension now defines Maranello. In every debrief, in every sim run, the question lingers: what kind of team does Ferrari want to be? This is no longer theoretical, because the DNA of the 2026 car is being decided right now. Hamilton and Leclerc are pulling in opposite directions. Hamilton toward predictability, stability, precision under pressure, and Leclerc toward aggression, liveliness, and instinctual control. It is almost impossible to optimize for both without crippling compromise, and the hard numbers are beginning to tilt toward Hamilton, whose so-called struggles are exposing systemic weaknesses and translating chaos into measurable progress. Those messy weekends? They were not setbacks. They were stress tests designed to break old molds and force Ferrari to confront uncomfortable truths. Which brings us to the bigger picture. This is not the story of a driver past his prime struggling to adapt. It is the story of a champion engineering a revolution from within, meticulously, relentlessly, and with the kind of foresight that could redefine Ferrari's soul. The critics who mocked his move are now silent as the data speaks louder than any meme, louder than any nostalgic headline. The paddock that laughed at Hamilton in red is now quietly watching a transformation unfold, decision by decision, adjustment by adjustment. This is not the end of a career. It feels like the beginning of a transformation, not just for Hamilton, but for Ferrari itself. And the ultimate question is no longer whether Hamilton can adapt to Ferrari. The question now is whether Ferrari is brave enough, radical enough, visionary enough to adapt to Lewis Hamilton.